It is June 8, 1940. In the Norwegian Sea, approximately 250 miles west of Narvik, the German Schlachtschiffe Scharnhorst and Gneisenau prowl the waters. Vice Admiral Wilhelm Marschall did not have a clear, defined objective, but then his radar detects the presence of unknown vessels in their vicinity. Marschall isn't sure what to make of it initially. The data seems to indicate some lone vessels are leisurely sailing nearby. As they close in, Marschall realizes the prize that has been presented to him. The British aircraft carrier HMS Glorious, escorted by merely 2 destroyers, was evacuating Norway. With the carrier unaware of the impending danger, the German vessels surge forward, ready to attack their monumental prey. As June of 1940 unfolded, the Norwegian Campaign, a tumultuous chapter in World War II's maritime theatre, began its descent towards closure. Fierce battles engulfed Narvik and its vicinity, with German, Norwegian, and Allied forces clashing from April to June. Initially, outnumbered German troops faced off against Norwegian defenders. The Allies eventually joined the fray, bolstering Norwegian ranks. As time progressed, German reinforcements continued arriving. Command and coordination challenges plagued the Allies. But on May 27th, they ultimately achieved victory, capturing Narvik after intense amphibious and ground assaults. Capturing this strategically vital port was important, albeit belatedly, after 6 weeks of intense struggle, trailing behind the rapid pace of continental events. With the clock ticking, they realized they couldn't hold on, and the evacuation machinery sprang into action just 10 days later. Allied forces, under the command of Captain Guy D'Oyly Hughes, orchestrated an evacuation plan for the Narvik area, home to approximately 25,000 troops. Amidst the hustle and bustle of preparations, 2 convoys embarked on their journey. The first left on the 7th of June, the other would leave the following day, laden with nearly 24,000 troops, under the watchful escort of ships from the home fleet. Among the vessels entrusted with covering this operation was the aircraft carrier, HMS Glorious. The carrier, accompanied by the destroyers Acasta and Ardent, was authorized to undertake an independent voyage to the UK from its mooring point at Bardufoss, departing before the second convoy. The carrier took on an additional weighty responsibility. Having provided crucial air support for the Narvik operations, HMS Glorious found itself laden with 2 Air Force squadrons aimed at defending Britain from potential German invasion threats. These consisted of 18 Gladiator RAF fighters and 8 Hurricane monoplane fighters. Their non-foldable wings posed a problem, leading to a lack of maneuverability and readiness in case of unexpected battle. Yet amidst these preparations for departure, the German Navy, attuned to the pulse of events in northern Norway, stirred into action. Operation Juno, launched on the 4th of June, aimed to relieve the beleaguered German defenders of Narvik, an imposing armada including the Schlachtschiffe Gneisenau under the command of Vice Admiral Wilhelm Marschall, and Scharnhorst, the heavy cruiser Admiral Hipper, and a complement of destroyers, set sail from Kiel. Marschall, sailing with a foggy understanding of the unfolding scenario and devoid of a specific mission, orchestrated refueling maneuvers at sea for Hipper and the destroyers on the 6th and 7th of June. He was unaware the Allies were evacuating Narvik. On June 7th, a Luftwaffe reconnaissance report spurred Marschall to organize a gathering aboard Gneisenau, however. Led by Marschall himself, officers sifted through reconnaissance reports and concluded that the Allies were indeed evacuating Norway. His fleet was positioned in an ideal position to intercept the Allies. Despite directives to bombard Harstad, Marschall discerned a potentially richer prize, the reported evacuation convoy. On June 8th, as the day unfolded, the German fleet moved in concert. It did not take long for them to spot their prizes. By the early afternoon, they began wreaking havoc upon British vessels spotted on the horizon. With several accurate shots, they sent the Navy oiler Oil Pioneer, the armed trawler Juniper, and the empty transporter Rama to a watery grave. At 13:30 hours, Marschall's detached Hipper and the destroyers for refueling at Trondheim. Meanwhile, Scharnhorst and Gneisenau pressed forward alone. Led by the Gneisenau, they steamed northward before veering to the northwest. They spent the entire afternoon patrolling without any success. But as the sun set, conditions favored the German fleet. A placid sea, a gentle breeze whispering from the northwest, and a horizon unobscured. At 3:45, Scharnhorst's lookout spotted a faint yet discernible thread of smoke, tracing an uncertain path across the eastern horizon. As the minutes ticked by, the distant silhouette gradually materialized into a mast. By 4 p.m., the lookouts confirmed the sighting of a vessel at a distance of around 36 kilometers. Reacting swiftly to the sighting, the German Schlachtschiffe wasted no time. Within 5 minutes, their engines began humming as they surged forward, altering their course starboardward towards the northeast. 10 minutes later, reports from lookouts echoed the discovery. The sighted vessel boasted a telltale feature, an unmistakable flight deck. Further observations revealed the presence of accompanying destroyers positioned to the north and south. In this moment, Admiral Marshall and his crew realized the gravity of their discovery. A lone aircraft carrier, sailing seemingly bereft of serious escort or protection, a vulnerable prize awaiting their approach. Having completed the delicate task of receiving the RAF fighters aboard, HMS Glorious altered her course for home. By the afternoon of June 8th, she cruised leisurely at 17 knots, her crew calm and performing their routine duties, tracing a steady path southwest. The two escorting destroyers maintained positions roughly 500 meters to the carrier's port and starboard. The carrier, devoid of the usual bustle on deck and with no vigilant lookout stationed aloft, remained seemingly unaware of the imminent threat that loomed on the horizon. Finally, an observer aboard Glorious noticed two unfamiliar warships emerging on the western horizon. Acting swiftly, D'Oyly Hughes dispatched the Ardent to investigate, while maintaining their course and ordering aircraft to be readied for potential action, while her engineers toiled to bolster steam production for increased speed. The silhouettes of the two unidentified warships continued closing in. At 4:20 p.m., finally a call to action station was sounded. On deck, a frenzied flurry ensued as crews readied 6 Swordfish aircraft for a strike, though the process was impeded by the aircraft's lack of immediate readiness. Additionally, the carrier accommodated 10 Sea Gladiators of Fleet Air Arm Squadron 802, along with Air Force Hurricanes and Gladiators being evacuated from below deck. By then, the Germans had altered their trajectory, turning sharply southeastward to close the distance. The German vessels, sailing in echelon formation with Gneisenau trailing on Scharnhorst's port side, surged forward at 29 knots. Despite initiating radio transmissions at 4:20 p.m. on an outdated frequency, Glorious's distress signals were not effectively transmitted until 30 minutes later, rendering nearby vessels uncertain of the urgency of the situation. Neither destroyer in the vicinity signaled at all, adding to the confusion. Brief hopes of outrunning the enemy flickered, as within 10 minutes, the resounding thunder of the battlecruiser's guns shattered any illusions of escape. Gneisenau initiated, unleashing a barrage from her secondary batteries upon Ardent, swiftly followed by Scharnhorst's 5.9-inch guns. In response, all 3 British ships began obscuring their positions with smoke. With alarming accuracy, the German salvos found their mark. Scharnhorst unleashed her 11-inch guns toward Glorious from 25 kilometers, ceasing fire on Ardent 1 minute later due to interference from secondary batteries. Scharnhorst's subsequent salvos struck their target with devastating accuracy. A shell breached the hangar deck, igniting a catastrophic fire that engulfed the aircraft and superstructure. Despite initial efforts to maintain momentum, damage to Glorious's boiler system led to a decline in steam pressure, resulting in a gradual deceleration. In a desperate bid to retaliate, Acasta and Ardent engaged the German behemoths, but their efforts were hindered by the vast distance. Ardent, emerging from its smokescreen at 4:42 p.m., launched torpedoes towards Scharnhorst, prompting evasive maneuvers. Narrowly avoiding a direct hit, Scharnhorst brought heavy fire upon Ardent, inflicting severe damage. As the relentless barrage continued, the 2 battlecruisers closed in, relentlessly pounding Glorious until her fate was sealed. At 4:56 p.m., Gneisenau directly struck Glorious, killing Captain D'Oyly Hughes. As the fire raised along the deck, the vessel was engulfed in smoke, preventing the battlecruisers from taking proper aim. The battered Ardent fired torpedoes as Scharnhorst targeted the destroyer with her secondary batteries. At 5:15, Glorious was once again within sight of the German battleships, enduring renewed bombardment from their main batteries. 5 minutes later, the fatal blow struck the heart of the aircraft carrier as Gneisenau's shell found its mark in her center engine room. With her speed dwindling and a starboard list developing, the carrier entered a slow, agonizing spiral to port. Scharnhorst now focused against Ardent. A direct hit snapped her mast, sending her plummeting to the depths after a courageous but futile counterattack that managed only a single, insignificant hit on Scharnhorst. Meanwhile, HMS Acasta, still unscathed, recognizing Glorious's inevitable fate, bravely turned back toward the enemy in a desperate bid to disrupt their advance. Commander Glassford rallied his crew, emphasizing their duty to stand firm despite the grim circumstances. With Glorious sinking and Ardent lost, Acasta pivoted westward, maneuvering past Scharnhorst's starboard beam. Maneuvering amid the smoke screen, Acasta unleashed 2 successive torpedo salvos, catching Scharnhorst off guard. Although the German behemoth attempted to evade, the torpedoes found their mark, tearing a gaping hole in her starboard side and causing chaos and devastation aboard. Acasta remained a target for Scharnhorst's secondary batteries until 6:10 p.m. In a final act of defiance, Acasta managed to land a shell on Scharnhorst's Bruno turret, eliciting a renewed barrage from the German warship. Around this time, Glorious succumbed to the depths, followed by Acasta 10 minutes later. The toll of the battle was staggering. Scharnhorst bore the scars of the engagement, expending 69 salvos. Gneisenau was more reserved in her firepower. Because of the damage to the German ships, and the captain's assumption the British had radioed allies, they sailed away without picking up any survivors. The frigid waters of the North Sea claimed all but a handful of survivors. Only 45 men endured on open floats and rafts, while the vast majority of the 1,245 aboard Glorious met a watery grave. Acasta and Ardent suffered similarly devastating losses, with only a handful of survivors amidst the wreckage. Yet even then, concerted efforts to locate survivors were lacking. Some fortunate souls found refuge aboard Norwegian vessels, but the toll of this harrowing engagement was stark, approximately 1,519 lives lost. Amidst the chaos, the loss of HMS Glorious remained unbeknownst to the British, as German interference hindered radio transmissions. It was only through a chilling broadcast by German radio that the Admiralty received news of the tragic events. The entire ordeal led to embarrassment for the Royal Navy. Questions arose in the House of Commons regarding the lack of a sighting report, with allegations of suppression by Vice Admiral Cunningham. Confusion over wireless frequencies and absence of aerial patrols were cited as contributing factors. Despite knowledge from Bletchley Park codebreakers about German transmissions, the Royal Navy disregarded warnings, leading to the tragic outcome. As for the Scharnhorst and Gneisenau, they still had many more miles to sail as the war at sea was in full swing. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please leave a like, it really helps out the channel. If there is a topic, battle, or person you would like to know more about, let me know your thoughts in a comment. I would also like to thank all my patrons and channel members for their generous support. If you enjoy House of History and you want to support my work, consider joining me on Patreon. For just $1 per month, you will already gain early access to all my videos without any in-video advertisements. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.